everybody, and welcome to episode 72 of On the Road with AutoTrader, where we make car stuff simple for Canadians. My name is Jodi Lai, and I'm the Editor-in-Chief of AutoTrader, and today, unfortunately, our pal Dan could not be with us, so we have a very good sub-in for him. This is Sebastian Bell.
Me, little old me. I'm Sebastian. I'm the associate editor of AutoTrader. I've been here since June, so you've probably seen my name on the website a bunch.
Yeah, so Seb and I and Dan actually used to all work together. And once I moved to AutoTrader, I kind of poached everyone because I love hiring my friends because I love and trust them. So that makes my job a lot easier. Yeah. But I feel like Sebastian is a great fit for this episode, which is another Am I the Jerk episode. This is the fourth Am I a Jerk episode we've done, and we keep doing them because you guys keep asking for them.
It's a true honor to be on an episode of Am I the Jerk, and I'm going to try so hard not to curse in this episode.
I mean, you can curse. Our editor, Chris, can always bleep them out.
Oh, yeah.
We've done that before.
Yes, I know. I've watched the podcast before, and I know that there's a lot of bleeping. The temptation to just spit out a line of curse words to make Chris work hard right now is overwhelming. But I'm going to try and resist the temptation.
Okay, I mean, he's new here, and he's already trying to make Chris's life difficult. I love that. So, in case you guys aren't aware, this Am I the A-hole, Am I the Jerk subreddit is where people post about conflicts they've had where they're not sure if they're in the right or the wrong. And the people of Reddit kind of band together and collectively decide whether or not this was jerk behavior.
Yeah. And collectively decide that every couple should break up, is my understanding of the subreddit.
There's a lot of red flags. When I'm doing research for these episodes, I am just shocked by the behavior of some people.
It's truly shocking the way that people exist in the world.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay, just as an example, this is like totally off topic, but kind of on topic.
Great.
On my way driving here this morning, you know, it's freezing outside, it's a polar vortex.
It's a polar vortex.
This guy in a Volkswagen Jetta had his entire windshield frosted over, all of the windows frosted over, and there was only a tiny little area in front of his face where he scraped off the ice.
Which is all you need to see.
What
truly.
the actual F is that?
That's such bad behavior. And it does remind me of my own story recently. On Sunday, I was going out. I street park around the corner, and we were carrying a bunch of heavy stuff. So I was coming around the block to park in front of my apartment. And as I was turning right onto my street, there was a woman walking across the street against the light, trying to ferry a raccoon across the street. First of all, adorable. Second of all, she was like really crossing the street against the light, and she was really whatever. So the person behind me started honking at me. Kind of understandable, whatever. But the woman was like, hold on,
because they didn't see the raccoon, probably.
Exactly. So she's like really making a lot of emotion. She's telling everybody to like move. She's like, there's a raccoon. The guy keeps honking at everybody. He's just like mad that we're not going, which is like, after a certain point, like whatever, you're in the situation, just like accept it.
I mean, like this story is the most Toronto story I've heard so far.
Yes. Well, no,
irritated drivers, raccoon crossing. What is more Toronto than that?
Yeah. And it was during the daylight, so, sick raccoon. We hate to see it. But then eventually the raccoon crosses the street. I turn onto my street and I'm going to parallel park. There's a red light in front of me about 40 feet ahead. So I'm just going to, quickly try and get out of the way as fast as possible. The guy starts laying into the horn on me. And
the same guy?
The same guy who was just very upset. So it's just like, okay, buddy, go around me, whatever. He goes around, stops 30 feet ahead of me. And it was just like, well, great. I'm glad that you saved 12 seconds in your day.
I hate that so much. People really irritate me. That's the one, what really grinds my gears? I think it's time to do another Road Rage Rants episode where we just complain about like the foolish driving behavior we've seen. But my biggest pet peeve is when people use the shoulder or the on-ramp as a passing lane to bud people in line.
That's such bad behavior. And like you're kicking up all kinds of dirt onto the road. It's like deeply unsafe.
It's not just that. It's just rude. Like, wait your turn in line. Everyone's got somewhere to go. Congratulations, you're 3 car lengths ahead. Do you feel better about yourself?
I do wonder what these people are like outside of their car. Like, is that the type of, are they a line cutter in person? Or is it just like once they get into a metal box, they're just like, no consequences. I can just go wherever I want.
I kind of feel like these are, like, if you're a jerk when you're driving, you're probably a jerk in the rest of your life.
Yeah, that's fair.
Right?
I think you're probably right about that.
And I know people make mistakes. Like, I've made mistakes when I'm driving where I'm like, oh, I'm sorry, that was a real jerk thing of me to do. But I'm
Absolutely.
like very self-aware when that happens, and I always feel really bad about it. And so I try to give people the benefit of the doubt. But the worst thing is when you see people and they successively do jerk things in a row. Like in 30 seconds, someone cuts someone off, doesn't signal, and uses the shoulder. I'm like, okay, real jerk.
My partner Ella is learning how to drive, and she's really getting into like, can she see the jerk before they do a jerk move? And she's getting good at it. And it is like a skill that I didn't know I had, where I'm just like, I see that person, they're driving kind of weird, and they're about to do something, they're about to behave poorly.
I mean, that's what defensive driving is all about, right?
Fair enough.
Like when I was learning how to drive, the number one tip that I got was like, just assume everyone is going to do something wrong.
Absolutely.
Because if you assume that, you're always going to be prepared in case just, something's coming at you and someone's being a jerk. So good for Ella.
Yeah. She's, and she really talks it through when she's in the car. She's like, you're going to be a jerk. You're going to be a jerk. And she's really like on her. She's great. Anyway.
I love that. We should just record that whole thing. And I think that would be such a great video. I would really enjoy watching that because Ella's like the sweetest person.
She is, but she knows. She can tell. Anyway, speaking of jerks,
let's start off this episode. So I pulled about 4 or 5 different questions that people had posted to the Am I an A-hole Reddit. This is the first one.
Okay.
Would I be the jerk if I back out of helping my sister pay for a car because she went and got a $65K Jeep instead of what we originally agreed on? So here's the backstory. I'm editing as I go because these are very long, so I'm just going to try to get the main points. My sister, 18, is starting college this fall. She doesn't have a car but will need one because she'll be commuting to school while living at home. At the beginning of the year, I, who am 27, told her that I'd help her pay for a car as a graduation gift. I'd pay the first $5K of her monthly payments. She has an almost full-ride scholarship and is living at home, so this will probably be her only recurring bill outside of school fees and supplies. I did this so that when she started working, she could build as much of a savings net as possible if something came up. First of all, what a good sibling. That's like really good sibling behavior.
All good, solid advice.
So far, so good, right?
So good, yeah.
My parents, sister, and I originally agreed on a max of $25 to $30K. This car isn't meant to last her a decade. She's never owned a car before. It's supposed to be an affordable used car for a college kid to get around in. Well, I was lied to because she and my parents went out and bought a brand new Jeep. I'm livid because my parents co-signed for her to get this. Not only did they buy a $65K brand new car, but they financed a $10K down payment at an even higher APR for some reason. For some insight, my parents cannot afford this car themselves, and they can't even afford the new payments on the loan they got for the $10K. There's a reason I'm the one helping out with payments on this and not them. My sister doesn't have a job yet, and that was supposed to be step 1 before we even got the car.
Yeah.
So, and then this person goes on to explain that the parents didn't really think this through. You know, mom went on for a whole hour about how the sister's eyes lit up at the sight of the car. You know, you wouldn't have said no to her either if you were there, this kind of stuff. The person goes on to say, my sister and parents both know 100% that she will not be able to afford this car. And I'm considering backing out. She and my parents are screwed.
Yeah, that's tough. I am not made of steel. I understand when somebody really wants something, it's hard to say no. But like, it's hard to say no when they're like, I want a chocolate eclair. And you're like, great, that's $5. I can throw
Treat
that to you.
yourself.
Treat yourself. $65,000 is a lot.
This is just a super irresponsible decision. I think on the parent side, like
absolutely.
Being able to say no to your children is like number one thing you need to do in parenting.
Absolutely. And I do think that like, I know that this sister is like a young adult, and I know that she probably like, I'm sure that there are things that she doesn't understand about finances and whatever, but also to ask your parents to go into like several or tens of thousands of dollars of debt for you is like a big ask.
Right.
And is kind of a jerk move on that person's part. But going to the person who asked the question, would I be the jerk? I don't think that you're a jerk for having boundaries. And I think that it is certainly possible that your family will be mad at you, but I think that just because people are mad at you doesn't mean that you were a jerk. And I think that you set a boundary. It sounds like you talked it through. Mm-hmm. It sounds like there was a lot of discussion about like, you know, these are the amounts that I'm willing to go, whatever. And like, whatever. I'm sure that there would have been a lot of like some room for negotiation in that, but like twice as much as the amount you agreed on is a huge overstep.
I just feel like this is so financially irresponsible, and for a young adult to not be taught about, fiscal responsibility and loans and that kind of stuff. I feel bad for this older sibling because now they're going to be responsible for the whole family's poor decision making, right? That's what it sounds like.
Yeah.
And it's not like you can return a car.
No.
You just can't return a car like other goods.
Yeah.
And then my question is like, okay, but like why didn't you just buy a used Jeep?
Yeah.
Right? You would have saved thousands and thousands of dollars, and she would have been just as happy.
Yeah, exactly. And then, like, even if it was a $40,000 car instead of a $60,000 car, like, I'm sure that's still an overstep, et cetera, and it still would be a financial burden, but, like, less of a financial burden.
Yeah. I mean, Dan and I talk about this all the time on the show where we think that a lot of the, like, auto loans, this whole system is, like, kind of predatory.
Well, it's enormous.
It, like, traps people into these, like, super long loans. And then it rolls over into their next car, and it just ends up burying people in debt. And
Absolutely.
I feel like this is exactly what's going to happen to this poor family.
Totally. And unlike Dan, I did read these questions in advance. So I was doing a little bit of just looking up to have some numbers. And in January, Edmonds, this is in the U.S. I assume this question's in the U.S., but my understanding is that the finance rates in Canada and the U.S. aren't that different.
Okay.
But in the U.S., 1 in 4 trade-ins for new cars have negative equity of $10,000 or more, which is like a huge burden.
1 in 4?
1 in 4.
Holy cow.
Yeah. So like it's becoming a much bigger issue, and it's becoming like, yeah, you're right. It's hugely predatory. It gets people in debt for their whole lives, and like especially coming at a time when people are have an enormous amount of school debt, and like in the States, it's even bigger. In the States, there's also medical debt to consider, and there's like, and now you're adding car debt onto that. Like, I don't know. I kind of assumed that millennials were terrified of debt because of the 2008 financial crisis. Like, I am so averse to debt. I really hate taking
I am
on
too.
It. Yeah. And like, my car is from 2014, and I'm a lucky baby ducky, so I paid for it outright. But like, I'm really averse to debt, and it's surprising to me to hear young people just be like, "Yeah, whatever, pile it on." That seems so wild.
I just think it's because this like newer generation. So this kid who's going to school is 18, right?
Yeah.
And I think if I was 18, I would just maybe it's just a difference of how we grew up, but like we would never ever put ourselves in that situation.
No.
Right? Like, I would never expect my parents to do that. I would never expect my siblings to do that.
No.
I just feel like this was a very poorly thought out decision, but I do not think that the original poster is the jerk.
No, I agree. And I think, like, I had a moment where I was like, you've already set the $5,000 aside. Just let it go. Just let it go to preserve your relationship with your family. Like, but $5,000 is a ton of money. If somebody asked me to just like drop $5,000, it would be a huge amount of money for me. So like, I understand why you don't want to do that. And also like you set very clear boundaries. And I don't think that backing out of this deal is a jerk move.
But I mean, there's also no way this person can back out of the deal because you've already paid the $5,000. You can't return the car. And so I think the consequences of this is that the person might be like, I'm not paying for any more of this car. You have to deal with it on your own.
Yeah.
And I don't think that makes him a jerk.
No, I agree. I don't think that makes him a jerk at all. I think that's like, they made a bad decision.
Yeah.
They can live with that bad decision. I know it's your sister. I know it's your family. That's going to be tough. And like, I would understand if you made concessions to preserve that relationship, but also I don't think you're a jerk for having boundaries. I think that a lot of people overstep boundaries all the time. It's accepted that it's a thing that we can do as family, and I don't think it should be.
Well said.
Thank you.
Well said.
Okay, shall I read the next Am I the Jerk?
Yeah, sure, go for it. This is also a very long one, so feel free to like edit as you go.
Okay, cool. Okay, am I the jerk for having my neighbor's cars towed from my garage?
This one is a spicy one.
This one is a spicy one, and I went through like waves of being like, you're such a jerk. Oh, you're not the jerk. Oh, you're such a... So,
I also go through waves, and I'm like thinking of things from different perspectives, but this one's really good because I feel like it provides a lot of context.
It does. Okay, my house is being built in a neighborhood that's a few years old. My lot is one of the few remaining lots, and there are occupied houses surrounding mine. The exterior is basically complete. The contractors are just putting up drywall. After work the other night, I decided to drive out to inspect the work. Everything looked fine until I decided to check out my garage. When I opened the door, I saw 2 cars and a minivan parked inside my garage. Emphasis, not my own. I called the contractor to see if he knew anything about them, and he was as perplexed as I was. My guess is that one of the neighbors decided to park their cars inside of my garage because there was a slight chance of hail that night. At first, I was just going to leave it alone, but the more I thought about it, the angrier I got. By the time I got in my car, I was steaming mad. So much so that I called a tow company to have them tow all 3 vehicles away. The next morning, my contractor called and told me the police was there to investigate the theft of the vehicles. I had them put the police on the phone and explained that I was the owner of the property and I had the vehicles towed. And I gave them the tow company information. My contractor told me later that the owner of those vehicles were shouting and cussing until the police made them leave. I went by after work, and a guy confronted me about being a jerk for having their vehicles towed. He was shouting about how I ruined their day because he missed work and their kids were late to school because he also said that I cost almost $1,000 to get all 3 vehicles back and that I would be covering the costs. I told him good luck with that and that he's the jerk for parking in my garage without my permission. We went back and forth until his wife came and pulled him away. Blah, blah, blah. Some of the neighbors came out afterwards, and they seemed to be mostly on the other guy's side. I can see their point, so maybe I overreacted. I'm not sure. Am I the jerk?
So this is one where I definitely said, I went back and forth. At first, I thought he wasn't being a jerk because this is his property, and someone felt entitled to store their stuff in your property. Yeah. And then wanted him to pay for retrieving the stuff?
Yeah, that's pretty bonkers. I think that this is one of those situations where everybody's kind of the jerk.
Interesting. Okay.
I think that the neighbors were jerks for just assuming that they could park their cars in somebody else's garage. Like, that's bad behavior, bad way to introduce yourself to your neighbor, and just like an overstep. Like, I think objectively, there's like nothing wrong with it, but it's like if somebody was in your house when you weren't there and you just be like, I don't like it, it's my space, I put a door there for a reason. And I think that that's jerkish behavior. However, I think that this is a wild overreaction to, or okay, maybe not a wild overreaction. I think that this is like something that this person was fully in their right to do. Like there was somebody trespassing on their lawn. However, I do think that they could have been more strategic in the way that they handled it.
So what should he have done here? Like maybe left a note saying like, hey, please remove your cars from my property?
I think a note would have been a great solution. I think knocking on either of the neighbors' doors would have been a great solution.
But you probably don't know who these cars belong to, so you're going to have to wait until they come back to find the note.
That's a good point. Yeah, absolutely. But I think that there are ways. I think that you're moving into a new neighborhood. I think that they acted in anger, which is like, whatever, we all get angry, feelings are fish, in a pond, try to be the pond, not the fish. We're trying to let the feelings move through us before we act on our behavior, act on our impulses.
I mean, it seemed like he was going to let it go at first, but then the more he thought about it, the angrier he got, which I totally understand, right?
Yeah.
And I kind of feel like I would never park my car in someone else's property.
No.
And then when things went wrong, not take responsibility for my own misstep.
Totally.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So like, I feel like the neighbors are more of a jerk here.
I agree with you that the neighbors are totally jerks. And if you're like trespassing on somebody else's property, like you have to accept the risk that like your car's going to get towed. That feels like the risk you're running. And like, so yes, I agree with you. I think the neighbors are totally being jerks in this situation. But I also think that like if you are moving into a new neighborhood, the person said that there was a chance of hail. So it wasn't just like the person was just like, there's going to be rain. I don't want my car to get wet in the morning. Like there was a risk of damage to their car. And
I don't think that's a good enough excuse. I think it was intentional, right? So like when I lived in a condo. Somebody had parked in my parking spot.
Mhm.
And I thought it was just an accident because, you know, the layout is almost identical the whole way down. And I thought, okay, maybe this person was just like tired or drunk or whatever.
Totally.
So I let it go.
Yeah.
I didn't get them towed, even though it was within my full right to get them towed.
For sure.
I just let it go, and it never happened again. So fine, problem solved, right?
Great. Yeah.
But this person was so intentional, and all 3 vehicles. And then my mind's racing. Like, okay, what about if there was a fire or something?
Right.
Who would be held liable?
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
And there's a whole question about liability. What happens if someone broke into the house and stole the cars? Then what? Right? And so I just feel like it opens up too many questions about what ifs. And how would they react in the situation?
For sure. And I do think that this is like a bad first sign where you're just like, oh, this neighbor's going to be a nightmare. They're going to come over all the time. They're going to be using my junk. And like, that sounds like a nightmare. I agree with you that the neighbor sounds bad. Like a jerk.
That's a bad neighbor.
That's a bad neighbor. But I do think that there's an element of strategy to it where you build up. I think that the question asker went nuclear immediately. And I think that there could have been a ramp up. I think a note would have been a great first option. I think that knocking on the neighbors on either side would have been a good solution. And I think that like setting a firm boundary of being like, oh, please don't do that. It's a liability issue, or please don't do that. Weird and I don't like it. All perfectly reasonable things to do. And like, then if the person does it again, I think that that's when you, call the tow company and do all of that. Because I do think that like, while the neighbor was behaving badly, I think that they were behaving badly in a predictable way. And I think that if you want to make your life simpler and the next you're building a house, I think there's going to be a lot of years there. Like that feels like a thing to try and like be a little bit strategic about.
Right. I mean, it was also really interesting that the neighbors banded behind the guy with the cars.
Yeah, that's weird.
Which I thought was also kind of weird.
Yeah.
I'd be like, who are my neighbors? Why am I moving here?
Also, like, butt out. Like, come on.
Yeah, right? Like, mind your own business.
Yeah. Mind your P's and Q's.
Okay, so we're saying in this case that the original poster is not the jerk, but he could have been less of a jerk.
Yes, I will.
And the neighbor is the real jerk.
I will agree on that.
Okay. This one was back and forth for me.
Okay.
Okay, here's another one.
Okay.
This one's kind of weird, but I thought it was funny. Okay. Am I the jerk for telling my girlfriend that the way she talks about her car is weird and embarrassing? I've been dating my girlfriend for about 9 months now. When she turned 21, her parents gave her a car, and she decided to name it Angie. I learned about this all on our first date when she said, Angie took me here. I thought it was odd, but I let it slide. Throughout our relationship, she's always talked about her car as if she was talking about another person. When she got a flat on the highway a few months back, she called me and said, Angie's shoe broke and she has to get a new one. When she goes to the car wash, she describes it as giving Angie a bath.
Okay, I was out, but I'm back in. Giving Angie a bath is adorable. I love it.
Okay. This is another one. I go back and forth.
Okay.
This all came to a head this weekend when me and my friends were out drinking and my girlfriend offered to be the designated driver. We were out for a couple hours and admittedly I got too drunk. When she came to pick us up, she said that she was stopping at the gas station to get Angie something to drink. This is where I may be the a-hole. I told her that it's weird and embarrassing for her to talk about her car like that. It's a machine, not a pet or a kid, and that she should treat it like how a normal person would treat any machine. She got very quiet and refused to say anything the rest of the drive home. She dropped off my friends and drove to my apartment. I asked why we weren't going back to hers, and she said she needed time to think and told me to get out. She's been radio silent since then, and I'm starting to think that I did something wrong. Am I the a-hole for what I said? Update. This person came back and updated their post. Well, she dumped me. She found this post, called me, and told me to never speak to her again. I guess it's for the best, though. We really wouldn't have been that compatible, as many of you have said. Thanks for your judgments.
Yeah, that sounds about right. I think that this person is offering up a lot of red flags throughout this whole question.
Okay, so like, yes, I do think that personifying your car like this is weird, but also so many dudes do this and they never get, ridiculed for it.
No, absolutely. This person is being adorable. She was being extremely kind, offering to just come to a party that she wasn't at to pick you up.
She was the DD, and you still dissed her about her car, about Angie?
Yeah, and like throughout this question, this person knows that they're being a jerk. Like you can tell by the way they're phrasing stuff, like this is where I may be the a-hole.
Yeah.
And like in the first paragraph where they're like, I thought it was odd, but I let it slide. Like, okay, red flag number one.
Right?
Like, you let it slide that she has a different way of talking to you. Like, I agree with you. This is a little bit cringe, but like, let's liberate ourselves from needing to not be cringe at all times.
So like, this is cringe, but it's also not hurting anybody, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely
like,
not.
And that's where I kind of think that this boyfriend dude was definitely being a jerk.
Huge jerk. Yes.
And I feel like, I don't know, I feel like guys do this all the time and no one ever makes fun of them for it.
No, absolutely. And I do think that this is also a thing that guys do in relationships where they subtly, God, we wish it was slutly. They subtly make fun of their girlfriends while they're being helped by them. And it really sucks. Like, this person is being extremely kind to you. This person has come out. She's paying for gas to come pick you up. She's going to a party that she wasn't invited to. And you're like, I was a little bit drunk and I made fun of her. Terrible behavior.
In front of all of his friends.
In front of all of his friends. Right? You're so right. I didn't even think of that.
That to me was real jerk behavior.
That's huge jerk
behavior.
Like,
maybe if this really bothered you, maybe you could have like waited till you were home and sober and just be like, hey, can we talk about this a little bit?
Absolutely.
You know, maybe sometimes what you do is kind of embarrassing. Like, maybe we can just keep this between us. Even that's a little bit of a red flag, but at least you're not embarrassing her in front of all your friends.
Absolutely.
Right?
And like, if this person is being cutesy about her car, it seems like she's probably being cutesy about other stuff. So like, yeah, maybe you aren't compatible. And like, that is fine. I don't think I would have suggested that these people break up, but I do like the radical self-respect that this woman has. Like, good for you.
I like a woman who like knows that, like, she just has conviction, right? She's like, I'm not doing anything wrong. Don't come for me.
Yeah, that behavior sucked, and you posted about it online. That's a line for me. Great.
Right?
Absolutely.
Easy peasy. Like, let's break it off. Find somebody who will appreciate the cuteness.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. No. This question asker, definitely the jerk, 100% in my opinion.
I think so too. Definitely a jerk.
Okay.
Although, like, okay, when you see people rolling down the road and they have like eyelashes on their vehicle, I feel like this is the same vibe.
Is it? It's the same vibe. I agree with you, but I think it's like a category of crime. I think it's like a different. Okay, first of all, live your life. Not my problem. You know, I do think that eyelashes are a little bit cringe, but like I said it before, and I think I meant it. Like, let's liberate ourselves from the feeling of not having to be cringe.
They're not hurting anybody.
They're not hurting anybody. It's cute. It makes them like their car more. Great.
I agree.
Board. Okay.
Yeah, this one was funny.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, when I was reading it, I'm like, oh, Angie. And then I started wondering, like, what kind of car is Angie?
Great
like,
question.
I had so many questions. What color is Angie, you know?
What's an Angie? I don't know why I'm picturing Civic. I'm just really am. But I don't know if a Civic is an Angie, though.
I think it would depend on what color it is.
That's a great point.
Maybe?
Yeah.
I don't know. I have a lot of questions.
I have a lot of questions, too. Does your car have a name?
We just call it Cupcake.
Oh, that's cute.
But I don't say that to people outside of like Chris and me and his kids. Like,
right.
I don't.
That's a private thing that you.
Yeah, like I would never come on the podcast and be like, me and Cupcake went out for a date today. Like,
it is that level of personification of your car, of like giving her a bath, giving her like whatever is like. It would take me a day to sort of adjust to that sort of use of language.
It's very, very strange. But then this also reminds me of there was a guy on one of those like TLC shows back in the day where it was like really questionable and they only profiled like strange, odd people.
Yeah.
And there was this one guy who like, I think he married his vehicle and he would regularly like show affection, like kissing it or like maybe doing other stuff with it. And I always thought that was super, super weird. And this is like not to that level of cringe.
No, absolutely. I think that if that person is getting the therapy that they need, then I don't want to yuck their yum. I don't think that they're hurting anybody.
Right? I'm not here to kink shame anybody.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not here to kink shame. That's weird. That's a challenging one. Not sure I can get anywhere close to on par with that. But like, if that person is getting the help that they need and feels mentally well, then go for it.
Right?
Know?
I never thought that we would bring up kink shaming on the On the Road podcast, but there you go. Things are fun.
It's the internet. It was a countdown. We were working towards it, and I'm glad that I could be the one to bring it up.
Okay, so we have two more. I'll let you pick which one you want to do because we're running out of time.
Let's do am I the jerk for, I'll do the next one. Am I the jerk for not letting my coworker drive my wife's new car?
Okay.
Context. Hello, me, 31M. My wife, 30F. Decided that we might try to start a family, blah, blah, blah. And one of the things that he asked his partner to do was to get a license. She never had one because she lived in Boston, and she did. So as a celebration, I got my wife an old beater and gave her some driving lessons along with a driving instructor, and she passed. She was driving the car, but whatever. But I thought I should treat her, so I put together some savings and bought her a brand new Mercedes A220, which she loved. Wild that you're just dropping that kind of cash on a new car, but great. Love that for you.
Okay, but the Mercedes A220, I'm going to assume this is in Europe somewhere because they don't sell A220s here.
Oh,
it's a little hatchback. It is like not an expensive Mercedes.
Not a
I just wanted to point that out.
Absolutely. I just think it's wild. It's still a car, though.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't think it was like an expensive thing. An A220 would be like, I don't know, 45?
Yeah, absolutely.
K, something like that?
Absolutely. Not a wild luxury.
Yeah.
But yeah. But good for you. I love that you can do this. About a month after getting the Merc, my car, the Civic, decided to give up the ghost. When I took it to the repair shop, it had various issues, including wiring, blah, blah, blah. My wife told me to take her car to work that day, so I took it, and I parked in the lot. And as I parked in the lot, a coworker, let's call him X, came up to me from his car. He started asking about the car and asked the price and where my Honda went. When I started telling him that what happened to my car, he cut me off midway through and asked if he could test drive the car. At which point, I told him it was my wife's car and that I would like to keep it pristine for her. He gave me a bit of an off look and stormed into the office block. As I walked up, I got a few weird looks, and when I sat down next to my work buddy, he said that X told everyone in the office that I am an a-hole and that I have changed into a snob for after getting my new car. I don't understand what I did wrong other than maybe not letting him drive the car. It would help if somebody could give me some light on this. Thank you. Am I the jerk?
Okay. I don't think this poster is a jerk at all.
No, absolutely not.
Like you said, boundaries are important. It wasn't his car, therefore he cannot consent to letting someone else drive it.
A good point. Also, somebody coming up to you out of the blue, sneaking up to you in a parking lot and asking, hey, can I drive your car? Is like weird behavior.
I'm getting ready to knife somebody.
Yeah, exactly. Don't like that behavior.
But it's also turned into a snob after getting a new car. Like I said, this is not an expensive Mercedes.
No.
You're not pulling up in an S-Class or a G-Wagon or something. This is an A220. It's a little hatchback.
Absolutely.
It is literally the cheapest Mercedes you can buy.
It's very entitled behavior from
right?
the coworker. The coworker's like, you won't let me drive your car, you're a snob. You got a Mercedes. Which is so wild.
It's so wild. If this guy pushed it further, I'd go to HR.
Yeah, no, that's
I'd be like, this guy is making my life difficult. He's spreading rumors about me because I had boundaries. Like, get lost.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And this actually comes up not a lot in our profession, but a lot of times we drive different cars because we're reviewing them, and people would be like, oh, hey, can I test it? I'm like,
no.
Technically, no, because I'm not allowed. I sign a waiver telling them that I'm the only person driving the car. Like,
absolutely,
there's a liability issue,
huge liability,
and I don't want to get into that. So I never allow people to drive the cars that I'm reviewing because it's not my car, and I can't give that consent.
No, absolutely, and it is one of those things that is like. Yeah, you're right. There are definitely people who are entitled to that. I remember at our old workplace, it was kind of a bigger issue because people knew that they would come up to us and be like, hey, I saw that car in the garage. Can I drive it? And you're just like, first of all, no. That's a wild way to start a sentence. And second of all, yes. Okay, is there something that the coworker could have done that would have been more normal? Like, can I sit in the car? I'm thinking about buying one. Can I sit? Would you be willing to take me for a ride in it? Those seem like more reasonable asks.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't say no to any of those.
Yeah.
I take my coworkers for rides all the time in cars that I have. And I think that's a totally reasonable request, right?
Totally reasonable request.
Yeah, but this coworker, real jerk.
A total jerk. Absolutely, 100%. And like to go jerk behavior to be like, this guy's a snob. Like, what?
Right? After he worked up so hard to save up for this little Mercedes that he was so proud of for his wife.
Absolutely.
Now he's getting trashed by his coworkers.
I know. You just can't win.
I'm glad that we work with really nice people who would never put us in this situation.
That's true. I'm glad too.
I mean, that wraps up this episode. We don't have an Ask an Expert today.
Okay, cool.
So I'll just end by saying, how was your first own the road with AutoTrader experience?
I'm very judgmental, and I love to be able to judge people and to have permission to just go off. And it was a great time. I love hanging out with you. And the only thing that could have made it better is if Dan was here too. So thank you so much for having me on the show.
We should try to have all three of us on the show one day. I think it would be a lot of fun.
I think so too.
It's also because like we all have such different perspectives on stuff.
Totally.
And I feel like we might butt heads a little bit.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
Which would be fun for our viewers and listeners.
Absolutely.
If you have questions or am I the jerk questions to ask us, you can email expert@trader.ca. But that wraps up this episode. Thank you so much for joining us. Drive safe, and we'll see you next time.